Okay, looks like we're live on Facebook. Come over here, adjust that. Pull up there. Facebook and everything looks good. Everything looks good on TikTok side of it. Fun. Wait for a few people to get in here before we start going. So, how was your day going?
Good. Busy at work and just getting the day wound down.
Fun. Is that where you're live at right now? Is from work?
Yep.
So, what do you do for a living?
I own a wrecker company,
Oh,
towing and
fun.
recovery, semi-lowboy, Landau work.
What's that like when you're trying to promote a derby?
It's pretty rough. I normally take about a week off and get the derby stuff set up, and then come back to a whole mess on my hands.
Fun. Let's see if that works there. All right. Looks like everything's set up in every location. See some comments before you go. So you bought Derby Icons from Tori Schutte. Is that how that went? Or
Nope. Tori sold it to Jack Fissler, and then I bought it from Jack Fissler. Jack moved it to Portland, Indiana after he had it at Champaign. And then I live here in Champaign, Urbana area. And then I always supported Derby Icons back in the day. I've ran, for years. And then Jack moved it to Portland. And then I also own another On the Gas Promotions demo derby as well. We do 15 county fairs a year. And I called Jack and said, if you're not going to have a demo at Champaign, then I'm going to have one on the Gas Promotions team event. And he called me back like 2 days later and said, you had good interest online. You might as well just buy Derby Icons for me. I'm taking the year off anyways. So I went ahead and purchased it from Jack, knowing that if you take a year off something, that's a lot of time to, try to rebuild and keep it going. And Jack kind of bought it at the tail end. And then Jack had a few problems here and there with a couple fairs and shows and stuff. And we're trying to bring it back to where it was.
so when you bought Derby Icons, like what all did you buy?
I bought the name Derby Icons. I bought a handful of flags, a stack of paperwork and a spiral binder, and 2 car lifts. And I bought the rights to the names and had to put all that stuff in my name, like, Derby Icons, Metal Mayhem, Fall Brawl, Spring Explosion. All those are ours. Nobody else can really use those.
I get you. So getting before that, how did you get started into derbying? Like what got you into the sport in general?
My dad and grandfather used to derby way back in the day, and then I've been derbying for probably 15, 18 years, and then was just kind of tired of going to a county fair where they're paying, low money and all that, and then I started promoting 1 or 2 demos here and there over the last 10 years, and then 1 or 2 derbies ended up to be 4 or 5, and then 7 and 8, and now we're up to 15 county fairs on a different promotion side. And then the Derby Icons we put on Metal Mayhem and Spring Explosion, and then we're going to have a Fall Brawl this year as well.
Fun. So when you started out in derbying, what were the builds like? Like what was your first car?
It was actually I started off in compacts when I was real young, probably, I don't know, 9 or 10 probably, and it was a Mustang, like a Fox body Mustang, and it was at TK Windows, which is another promotion company that had a demo promotion, and it was basically in a cornfield with some grandstands on each side behind a bar, kind of old school. And they had 2 events there a year and had good success with it. And then they started building homes on the other side of the cornfield, and they shut them down because the neighborhood was like $400,000 or $500,000 homes, and it just got to be where that track wasn't going to work with the people that bought the homes. So they ended up shutting it down. And then by that time, I was old enough to run county fairs and stuff like that. And I got into big cars like Rivieras, wagons, Buicks. I'm a big 80s Cadillac fan. People always laugh when we come in because we have like an 80s Cadillac and an old iron heat race, and they're thinking like, what's this guy doing? But when you run enough of those, you kind of know what to do and what not to do.
So what's the thinking behind the '80s Cadillac then?
I just think they're a lot stronger up front, and I have a lot of those, and just spent time on them, and where they bend and where they don't bend, and just personal preference. And a
I
lot of
get
our
you.
shows around home is 1980 and newer, so like running a Caprice versus a Cadillac, I think there's like a night and day difference. And once I built those, it was just easy to take the cage out and the motor, tranny, dry shaft, rear end.
I get what you're saying. So how many times do you usually run in like per year?
Before business really took off with heavy duty towing and recovery, I would probably run 25 derbies a year and just build cars all the time. And then we got into like heavy duty hauling and towing and kind of branched off of our company to bigger things. And that slowed me down. And then I had a kid that's getting ready to be 6, so that kind of changed things of being in the shop and then trying to go to derbies every weekend. So I pretty much traded, um, going to derbies and running to promoting the derbies, trying to give the best we can to, how we try to feel how people should be treated and things like that. So now I run about maybe 3 cars a year. I think last year I ran 3 or 4, but they were bigger shows, really no county fair every other weekend. I ran a couple county fairs, ran Sam Williams show, and I think that's about it.
So, going back to it, when you were running 20 shows a year, what were you like doing for a living at that time? Because that's a lot of derbying.
We still did towing and recovery, but we did light duty towing. So we didn't really haul equipment. We probably did maybe like, I don't know, maybe 15 tows, 20 tows a day to where I could work in the shop. And then if we got a call, I would go do a call and I could manage it. But now we have like 75 vehicles that we own at the company, big semi wreckers and Landau and hauling equipment. So my days are cut a little short when you tow a tractor trailer to, from here to, you know, Wisconsin or Indiana or, whatever the case might be.
I get you. So your guys' biggest show would that's Metal Mayhem, right? Or is it Spring Explosion?
Spring Explosion is the bigger show. It's been the bigger show with Derby Icons, I think, always since day one. Then they have Metal Mayhem, Fall Brawls, kind of a cleanup show. But yeah, Spring Explosion is definitely a packed house and a fun time.
So what's so much different between Mayhem and Spring Explosion?
I think it used to be where it's a team event, so everybody in the garage. It's earlier in the year. Everybody's coming over, helping out, building the car. People are coming to support each team that's running. And then Metal Mayhem's kind of a singles event, and it used to be in April. Um, Spring Explosion was in April, and then Metal Mayhem was in June. So you had very little time to build your car for Spring Explosion, maybe blow a motor up, blow a rear end up, spend all your money on building this perfect car in April, and then literally 35, 40 days later, do all that over again. It's pretty rough on a driver to make that transition. And then I also think like, you know, 10 years ago, demoing was kind of a little bit different. People had more time. People didn't have kids. People didn't work overtime. People had more garage time than they do now. I think back when I was like 18, 20 years old, I didn't have a care in the world. It was just demo, 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 demo. And now that I got older and have a business and a kid and a family and all that, that kind of takes toll on how many derbies you can run. So if you take when I was 20 and now I'm 34, you take all those people that's been demoing right along with me over the United States, there's really not another group of people that's just die hard as many as there was from when I was 20 until now. So I think that's kind of made an impact on who's next in line to take over the people that's been demoing for, the last 15 years that slowed down.
I get what you're saying. So going to your guys' like main shows, what is your guys' main show rules? They're pretty stock, aren't they?
Our Spring Explosion is like a limited weld. You get a front plate, 6 body mounts, lower cradle, basically everything but like a protector, the backside of the protector, 6 body bolts, 2x2 cross member. This year we're allowing trans braces on the top. I mean, it's a pretty mild, easy build. Metal Mayhem's pretty much a bone stock. Change your body bolts, put your goodies in there, motor, tranny, rear end, wire the doors, weld the doors, and then you run.
So what's the thinking behind keeping Metal Mayhem like such a stock and basic build?
It's just always kind of been that way since, it started. It's always been kind of a bone stock, and then, it starts bone stock, and then another person wants this, and the next person wants that, and then, it's like a 4 or 5 year revolving circle of where it's stock, and then in 5 years we're right back to, like a limited weld pro mod, and then people want stock again, and then it's like another transition all the way around.
I get what you're saying. So do you guys? So why are the rules so different between Spring Explosion and Mayhem then?
Well, we have a couple filler classes that people can run their Spring X cars at Metal Mayhem. Um, I think it's just the clientele that follow Derby Icons like that build middle of the year, that it's just easier to build a car in the middle of the year versus building a limited weld like a Spring Explosion car. Because Spring Explosion cars used to have full protectors, crammed into the firewall. I mean, it was a pretty heavy build. We've kind of backed that off just for financial reasons, and make it an easier build, let the cars give. And a lot of times people, if you have those hard cars, you're really just going to lose a wheel or break a transmission that's going to take the car out. That's not really a fun show to watch.
I get you. All right. So in your guys' limited weld for Spring X, are you allowed hump plates?
No.
So what is the reasoning behind that? Because like from around here in Ohio, basically anywhere from a lot of the stock classes you get hump plates. So what's the reasoning behind no hump plates?
Just make it kind of fair for everybody, and that's just kind of what we've rolled with. And if you give them hump plates, then they want bumper brackets, then they want, it just keeps on going on down the line, and then you might as well just draw the line and build a hard car and bring it. We're trying to make it easier and a little bit easier for everybody. Like the first year we opened it, we had good success with the cars. It was kind of more of a mod wire where you wired the trunk lid, wired the hood. You have to have give between the transmission and the cross member. And then over the years, we kind of don't try to change things a whole lot because that kind of scares people off. Because normally, if you're a good car builder, you have to run a derby for like 2 or 3, 4 shows to figure out the inspector and what you can get away with, what you can't get away with, and what's the nitpicky stuff that they're going to have you cut. So we just don't like drastic change. We feel like we have a good group of people that are following us. Josh, I have to give him a lot of credit. He does inspection, answers all the questions, and we've just kind of come to the agreement that we don't want a huge change. So like, next year we wouldn't add hump plates and shimmer protectors and, all this stuff. Cause then you have a good group of people right now, maybe 20 people out of the 400 that we have want that. And then you've scared off, 300 and some people because, you have a drastic change when we're having good success that we have now.
So do you think that's a huge part of the success is maintaining the same set of rules and not making major changes at all throughout such a long course of time?
Oh yeah, I would definitely say that's 110%. No driver wants to go to a show for 2 or 3 years and build the same kind of car, weld the doors the same, do some stuff here and there that is not a huge deal to maybe us, but it is to somebody else. And then all of a sudden, you change the rules on them. Now they have to come up with a whole new concept to build a car, or you change inspection person. You're going to lose cars your first or second year when you change inspector, because if you've ran a show for 4 years, they might inspect your car and agree with your bumper shock bracket and how you have your cage, and you run their shows 4 times a year, and all of a sudden they get some new inspector in there. Well, no one really interprets that same stuff the same. So now you come back the next year and this guy wants you to cut the whole car apart, and your first thing's going to be like, well, I've ran this for the last 4 years with so-and-so, and he never had a problem with it. And he's going to say, well, so-and-so's not here anymore. Go cut it. The next year, you're going to find somewhere else to run.
I can completely agree with that. I've done that myself.
Yeah.
So why do you think so many different promoting companies change everything every year then?
I don't know. I think maybe they just try to. I mean, any promoter's trying to get as many cars there as they can. I think some promoters get tied into, you get these people on the internet that say, oh, well, if you have this class, we'll have 45 cars there. So you put some kind of a purse out thinking you're going to get all 45 of these people on the keyboard, and you only end up with 12 of them. And then you build a set of rules for that. And then you do that for, 5 or 6 classes. The next thing you know, you got 15 classes, but you really didn't gain that many more people because all the people that said they were going to come, they didn't come. Have a full weld kicker class. I'll bring 40 cars. Everybody's interested. You do that and you end up with 9 kicker cars. So you pay out $5,000 and they brought in $1,000 in entry fees. Where did everybody else go when you put this out on the internet?
I get you. That's like what? So, I'm not. I'll just say this. So last year when I ran Buried Alive, it was a pretty pretty stock style build when it came to like no trans braces and no stuff like that. And they had a pretty big car count for everything considered. But then this year they added trans braces and it completely turned off an entire group of guys.
Yeah, and then what happens after that is you turn those guys away and you start making phone calls like, well, how come you didn't run? Well, you allowed trans braces because you listened to 20 people on the internet or 20 people that want you to have trans braces. Well, then in a promoter's mind, it's like, well, I need to have a bone stock class to get all the people back because I had 80 cars. I allow trans braces and now I only have 25 that showed up. Well, now the promoter's thinking, well, I need to have 2 classes now. So now the promoter's got 15, 20 grand wrapped up in 2 classes, and he's really not benefiting anything because you got 40 in one and 40 in the other. You're right back up to 80 cars when you had 80 cars and had success with it for many years. And now you're changing things to where you're kind of going backwards. Does that make sense?
I know exactly what you're saying. So do you think another one of the reasons that you guys seem to have huge events every single time with Derby Icons is because the builds are fairly lighter compared to everything else in the country, basically?
I wouldn't say they're fairly lighter. I think that, you know, in kind of any kind of business, if you stay consistent and you stay true to your word and you treat, 90% of people right, and the reason I say 90% is because nobody can make anybody 100% happy. I mean, the stories go on and on and on of, my head tech guy, Josh, I'm never coming back here for, there's just tons of stories on, that's a whole different case. But I think if you stay consistent and you have a good build and you don't change things drastically, I think you'll gather more people later on down the line and not turn people away. Like I know for sure if we added full cradles next year, I would probably lose half my field. Then I would be chasing them, trying to find them because right now it's working. Why change drastic when something's working?
How many cars did you guys have at Mayhem this year for the main class?
I think we had 110 sign up for the main class, and I think 70, somewhere in the 70 to 80 some-ish actually ran the Derby. So we had 8 heat races of 10 is what we had.
I haven't heard of numbers like that for a show this year at least.
And then Mayhem before that, the first year we had it, I think we had like 75 that signed up, and I think the day of we had 52. But I also think that was a transition year because, I'm the same way. If I've heard bad things about something that happened 4 years ago and they sold it to somebody else and there's bad blood there, why should they give me their money and come support me and run when they've been dicked around 2 or 3 times before? So I think people let us buy it, watched the first Mayhem and thought, wow, these guys inspected good. The cars were clean. The cars were fair. The second Metal Mayhem, our numbers pretty much doubled with consistency. So I'm hoping that the third Metal Mayhem, we're at least 110, 125 cars for the main show, probably have maybe 85 to 100 that actually run the show. I would be very pleased with that because you never get everybody that comes and signs up. just all the way across the board.
I get you. So, going off of that, when it comes to your guys' shows, going off of the inspection, what are you guys allowing, and how do you guys inspect the cars after the heats? Like, how do you basically control what is allowed to go on in the pits?
We pretty much tell people if you go out and put a good heat race on and everybody's getting with it, as soon as you get off the track, you can work on your car all night. You have to bring it back to inspection, put it back on the lift. You get 6 Band-Aids. You can porter power stuff out, cut sheet metal out, no restubbing or front frame rails. I mean, you have to use your 6 Band-Aids if you want to, cut something and roll something up and put your patch plate on there and it looks like you never cut something and you used your patch plate, that's fine.
I get you. So what other welding do you not allow any other welding besides the fix-it plates?
No, that's it. You weld your front bumper on, your shock, 6 body bolts, your bumpers, motor tranny has to be on rubber mounts, 2x2 cross member held in by 6-inch angle iron on each side of the frame. Have to have a 2-inch rubber gap between the tranny and the cross member, slider dry shaft, Watts link conversion, aftermarket trailing arms. You can roll the back end just by the frame rails, just by heating them up and beating them. You can't fold the quarter panels over. Straight sheet metal down the car. We do allow after inspection 30 minutes. There's a cool video online. We allowed, I think, between 70 and 80 cars at once to beat on their car with just hammers only, no power tools, no torches, no nothing. But literally, we had the cops show up thinking that guns were going off because you had, between 70 and 80 cars beating on their car with hammers, 4 or 5 buddies with sledgehammers, because we let them push the trunks down, fold the quarters over, no machinery work, just, pure hand work for 30 minutes. So there's a video on the internet of just 30 minutes of just beating chaos and, trying to, do a little bit you can.
So what is the reasoning behind that?
Just to where people at home can't get creative if they don't have a skid steer, or, maybe you get somebody at home that's, wants to do their whole back end over the whole weekend. We just kind of feel it's more fair for everybody that everybody's got straight sheet metal when they come to the Derby. We give you 30 minutes to go out there. Everybody has a fair shake in that 30 minutes. You can't really do much. I mean, you can ball peen the quarter panels and push the trunk lid down with a hammer. I mean, there's not much you're going to do with a hammer. It's not like you have an excavator where you can fold all the sheet metal over tight and roll your back bumper up to the trunk lid,
So you're basically only really allowed to touch the quarter panels.
Yeah, you can, pinch the quarter panels in, pound the sheet metal up, whatever you want to do with ball peen hammers or sledgehammer.
Do you allow the guys to use come-alongs or anything like any? So it's just hammers.
Yep, just hammers and your body. That's it. 30 minutes. Take it or leave it. So,
which that's honestly a genius idea, because you have, which obviously the hot things these days is to put you roll the quarters and put them on top of the frame. And not a lot of guys know how to properly do that. And that when going to inspection, that just makes a lot longer time to properly inspect those. So that just completely eliminates all of that while also keeping the same build. That's genius, in all honesty.
Yeah, I just think it's a more level playing field. Some people like, I have 2 excavators, a skid steer, and tow truck. So I can literally pull the front of my car down, roll the trunk lid up in less than 2 hours with the equipment I have. Not everybody has access to that. So as a driver, I'm kind of on both sides of a driver and a promoter. So if I feel like I've been to a Derby and I walk through the pits like, man, what did I come here and get myself into? I don't think that's quite fair. I kind of put myself in a driver promoter shoes. And then Josh, that's the head inspector, he kind of does inspection to where he's a welder fabricator and he's a car builder. He used to build cars for people back in the day, and he used to run cars as well. So his inspection is he's a builder and a promoter / inspector, which is a total different than a guy that doesn't really build cars or maybe just builds Crown Vics. He's built a variety of cars. So I think our inspection, he's a builder, so he understands that you did that, but that's not going to work. You need to fix it this way, or, it's pretty genius, great job.
So, a question I asked last night was, so obviously, from the sounds of it, you don't have this, but what are your thoughts on how a lot of these promoters have? Well, let me rephrase this question. So, as a driver, when you go to a show and you have somebody inspecting your car that cannot build the car, that has never built a car of that quality, how do you think that affects the show?
I would first think that that person would not be doing that for me. You know, if I wouldn't want somebody inspection that doesn't know much about cars. I mean, if I had somebody in inspection that wanted to help, you know, I would give them the job of check the battery and gas tank and, put the stick on the car. That would be their job. I just wouldn't want to put myself in that situation or a driver to not get a fair shake when, Joe Blow ran one Crown Vic 7 years ago and he thinks he's the best inspector ever. I just wouldn't put myself in those shoes.
I get you. That's very interesting. So, going off of that, what for next year, or is anything going to change for Metal Mayhem or Spring Explosion, or is everything going to stay the same?
Everything's going to stay the same. We went back through the rules and just kind of cleaned up a couple things that was just minor things. Like an 8-inch bumper. Last year, it just said you could have any kind of bumper on the car, replicate bumper, and then people are getting kind of carried away with 10, 11, 12-inch bumpers, and we moved it back down to, like equivalent to a Chrysler New Yorker or 75 Impala 8-inch bumper max. Can't hang out past the wheels. Other than that, I mean, nothing really crazy. Like I said, we got a good thing going with a group of people that's following us, and we're not going to go out and change something dramatic because I don't think there's a need to. We'll have a couple filler classes that's, kind of late in the year for people that have different cars and builds that they need to bring, finish them off if they want. We had a county fair class. We had a couples class last year where the wife drives, wife drives steering, and the husband does the brake and shifter and gas on his side. So it's kind of like a co-pilot class, but it's with, the husband and wife. We had like 55 of those, I think, sign up.
Awesome. And then, so when it comes to putting on big shows like Metal Mayhem and Spring Explosion, what are some of the most hardest and challenging obstacles you face throughout that weekend and the weeks leading up to it?
I would say when you book 350, 400 cars, I would say trying to get them all through inspection and get everything done so you can start on time. And kind of the other one is a couple days before the Derby. I mean, people that build a car over 6 months, yeah, they have a lot of time in it, but we're there a week or two before the show starts, setting the track up, putting fences up, getting everything in line, putting cones out, drawing maps for where people need to go. That's a huge thing when you're trying to put an event on, of trying to get people in there and get the right flow of traffic and inspection set up and 2-post lifts in the building and how everything's going to go down. And then I would say lastly is probably, it's always kind of like a kick in the teeth when you put a good event on and you get home and people bash you on the internet because, you started 10 minutes late or you changed, the time of when the compacts were going to run, you put them before one consi, and I felt like I should have ran first because I would have had more time to work on my car. It's just little things like, we've been here for a week and a half and we had an awesome show, and then you're going to put your side of the story on there because maybe you didn't win the Derby or you're just mad in general because, you felt like you should have had more time to work on your car. But not only did you not like that, there was 75 other people that I gave the same option to, and you're only one or two that are mad about it. It's just kind of like a kick in the teeth.
I completely agree with that. And then going from that, what are some of the best parts about putting on the show and the best parts of that weekend?
I would say the people that come up and say, you guys did a hell of a job and I'll be back next year. And, inspection was good. You treated everybody fair. cleaning up the fairgrounds, and the fairgrounds keeper, pretty much telling us what a great job we did cleaning the venue up and all the trash, and you took everything down. And I mean, those fairs are driven on, horse shows and much things that are a lot larger than demo derby in their eyes. Their eyes, I'm there for 5 days and I've wrecked the place. The grass is tore up, their tracks messed up, the bathrooms are, destroyed. There's trash everywhere. So to leave there and everybody's, 85% happy and the other ones that are not happy, I just, kind of preach to them. You go out and find a venue. You go out and put up, 90 to $100,000 on a risk of it could rain all weekend and nobody shows up, or you could put out there and nobody signs up, which is a huge risk. So I don't think by switching the compacts consi before another event, after the risk that we put on, I don't think their opinion's very valid. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Which I think one thing that every live that everything, the main thing that seems to come across is that, Derby people are, I say it's 90-10. 10% of the time, Derby people are amazing. Like, we can all come together for event, like organizations like Crashing for Kids Cancer, and do tremendously amazing things, but then go right back to being very spiteful and hateful people throughout the entire community. Can you agree with that in a way?
I would say it's probably more. I mean, there's derby people that can go out there and, get their whole front end tore off in 3 hits and come up and say, man, you had a hell of a show. I will be back next year. Tonight wasn't my luck. And then you also have those people that come up and they got their whole front end tore off and they're never coming back because that dude shoved me into a wall. And then I backed up and here come a guy full track and stood my whole front end up. You're the worst person ever. I'm never coming back here. I felt like I was teamed up.
So how do you
Those
deal
are
with
two
those
different people.
situations?
I just tell them that, I guess today wasn't your day and I can't make everybody happy. That's just life in general. But, I would probably say it's 60-40. If you've been demoing for 10 or 15 years, you're on a different respect level than if you've been demoing for 5 years. Just your attitude and, when you go through inspection, well, I'll just load up and leave. Okay, if that's what you want to do, I'm telling you that you need to cut that bracket off. And, if you don't want to do that, then leave. If you have someone that's been running for 15 years, they're going to say, okay, can you show me how to fix it? I'll be back in 10 minutes. No problem, sir. Thank you.
So you think it all comes down to a respect thing amongst drivers and officials?
Oh yeah, yeah, and people's just personality. I mean, I do business with people every day, and there's some people that we can tow their semi 50 miles and charge them X amount of dollars, and they say, "Hey, thank you for coming to get me in the middle of the night." And then there's other people that are like, "Are you kidding me? You charge me that much to come get me at 10 o'clock at night?" Well, yeah, I charge you $750 for a 50-mile tow. It's 9 o'clock at night, and I have an $800,000 wrecker, and diesel fuel's $5 a gallon. So yeah, I did charge you $750. And some people are just different, and no one's the same.
Completely agree. So a thing that I was kind of wondering is, so when it comes to that, and when it comes to the respect amongst drivers, well, you guys have obviously had most of the biggest names in the country run for your guys' show. Do you think the respect level, like amongst that group of elite drivers, is far much higher or far much lower than 90%? Well, the majority of everybody else,
I would say we have a pretty good group of following. We don't have very many problems with, attitudes and things like that. And we're kind of on a different caliber than your regular old county fair of, people coming and they're, build 1 or 2 cars a year and they got put up over the wall. I mean, how many times have you been to a derby where someone got shoved up over the wall and they get out of the car and throw their helmet down and they're screaming and yelling at people in the grandstands and they're standing over there in their little, corner with their group of people. And it's like, you got put on the wall. I mean, come out in the constant and figure it out. Why are you mad? You were just at the wrong time at the wrong, it just amazes me to stand back on the sidelines and look at people's facial expressions over something that, was kind of in your control,
I completely agree. But do you think the adrenaline and like the which you've derbied and I've derbied, like the adrenaline of that environment is unlike anything else most people ever experience. Do you think that contributes to that in a way?
I would say, yeah, it does. I mean, you're kind of different than, when you're doing circle track, you don't have much, you know, yeah, you have some guy behind you following you for 100 laps, but, he's not really chasing you down and spinning you out and shoving you into the wall. And, you get those good grudge matches going on. Those are always the best when two people are going at it and it's like they're in their own little derby out there. And you don't really have that in another sport. Yeah, you have NASCAR people fist fighting and, you spun me out on the last lap, but imagine that dude spinning you out on every lap. They would have much more fighting in NASCAR if they spun out every single lap and you had some guy, following you around all night on the track.
Do you think that derbying outside, how do I want to phrase this question exactly? Do you think derbying, the competition level in derbying, brings forth that type of energy, that like, let's go fight about it energy more than other sports just because of the competition level and the direct competition level because it's directly a destructive sport in a way?
I would say yes and no. I mean, it depends on what kind of drivers you have there. Now, if you're at a county fair and, the county fair atmosphere is different than a big show. I mean, we have more problems at county fairs and the grandstands and people getting mad at each other than we do at our big events. Now, whether that's because it's a respect level and, those same guys travel around and run these bigger events and, if they got handed to that night, they get out and shake their hand and, the next time, it might be a little bit different and they say, okay, and walk off. The county fairs, you have a way more, amped up energy and wanting to fist fight and just a different kind of clientele, I guess.
That makes sense. So, which one do you enjoy doing more, the county fairs or the big shows?
Um, I mean, the county fairs are a much different caliber as far as, I can just show up Saturday morning at 8 o'clock and set some concrete barriers, and I'm home at, 10 o'clock at night, and we had 60 cars and the grandstands were packed versus a Metal Mayhem where it takes 2 weeks to prep the track and get everything set up. And you got, triple the risk involved on a own county fair. When you go to a county fair, you don't have to rent the venue. You don't have to clean the trash up. You don't have to take tickets into the grandstands. I take about maybe 6 or 7 people with me to a county fair show to put on in a trailer. Metal Mayhem, I probably have 30 people there doing something for me, some way or shape or form. And then I have to find skid steers and operators and backhoes and end loaders. And it could rain all weekend and be nobody there.
Speaking of rain, what like track preparation do you guys usually do to ensure that no matter what the weather is, the track will most likely remain good?
We usually set the track up like 2 weeks before, and we take a big grader or a dozer and scrape the whole top of the track off down to like where it's rock hard, and then set the concrete barriers all the way around. And then we let it sit. That way, if it does rain, the water will just run off the top. We can take skid steers and, take the top little wetness off, and, it's a good hard track still.
Makes sense. So, have you ever had an instance where it just rained and rained and rained, and you had to do a lot of track work throughout the show?
Not at Metal Mayhem or Spring Explosion because the dirt that we're on is a good hard foundation. But we have had a county fair where at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning we went there and there's like 10 or 12 inches of rain and nasty muck all over the ground. And I went and got one of my customers that I haul equipment for. I went and borrowed their dozer, and then he actually called me, and he's an operator as well. And he showed up with this track with about 8 or 12 inches of just nasty water muck the fair board pretty much canceled the whole evening, and he promised me in 5 or 6 hours it'd be the hardest track ever. So we left and set up some barricades. We come back, and he literally dozed down about 3 foot, and we didn't even need the concrete barriers. He actually took the dirt that he dug down and put it on the edges, and they were basically spinning tire out there like it was on asphalt. And I called the fair board at noon and said we're demoing, and there says there's no possible way. We every time we get a little bit of rain, the track's just horrible. The sun ended up coming out, and it was like semi the biggest night they ever had. Then they asked me what I was going to do with their track, because their track had a 3 foot hole in it by 90 feet wide by 150 foot long, and I told them I'd figure that out next week. At least we had a demo tonight.
So what ended up happening with the track? Did you have to fill the hole in?
Yeah, we filled it all back in and ran a disc over it, and then did the best that we could for it. But I mean, a lot of people, they kind of dog county fairs because they don't pay enough money, and the list goes on. But they're in business too, to where that county fair demo derby night is probably the biggest night for a demo derby, which means they should pay a little bit more money. But they also have to get through the next 7 days financially on taking a risk of having, monster trucks and the grandstands don't fill. They still had to pay that monster truck guy to come there, whether 10 people or 10,000 are in the grandstands. But we just kind of go to a county fair and tell them that this is what we can do, this is what we can support, and if you can't meet us halfway with, what you bring in and we feel like's fair to the drivers, then we're not putting on your fair. Have someone else do it. So you kind of have to be in the middle of, we know what you're making, we know what you need to make, we know what we're worth. And, you go to a county fair and they pay $600 for large cars, and the grandstand's got 10,000 people in it. That's a whole different ball game of kind of agreed when it comes to that aspect.
Do you think that kills a lot of those county fairs and a lot of those shows?
No, because there's a county fair that's 20 miles down the road that has a purse of $5,000 over the whole night, and it's in July. I put on like 6 derbies in July. I don't put on that one, but I would go to drivers and say, I'm paying $3,000, $2,000, $1,000 for modifieds. Why don't you guys come and save your car and bring your pit passes, since you follow me to all these other derbies? I can't do that. I got Jim's painting and signs on the side of my car. He gave me $200. I got to run that county fair, and my family's going there. Yeah, I get that, but you're kind of contributing to the cause too of going there to win 600, 300, 100 because Jim's painting put his name on the side of the car. We're 20 miles down the road. Why don't you bring Jim and 30 of your family members and come support me when we're paying $3,000, $2,000, $1,000? And the same night, I have maybe 10, and he had maybe 8 to 15 cars show up for 600, 300, 100. So it's like the drivers are just as bad as reflection of a county fair as that. If nobody showed up the first year and a promoter went in there and said, you had 7 cars show up because of money, they would change that the next year, guaranteed. But they don't do that because they always get at least 30 or 40. Even though their payouts are crap, they still get 30 or 40 because their family's there. It's the hometown track. I can't go nowhere. I've ran this track since I've been 10 years old, and I have to support it. Well, you're supporting it, but at the same time, you're bitching about not getting enough money to win first place, and I'm paying triple the amount, but you can't bring those people and those pit passes to our event.
If I was in your area, I'd be running for you, because I'm currently kicked out of my hometown fair. They threatened to have me arrested, banned me from the Facebook group. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Which, going off of that, so since you're obviously a business owner, how similar is promoting derbies compared to your regular business?
It's pretty much the same. You're not going to please everybody, and every day that we do business here is a risk, and every time we put a show on is a risk. We've put shows on that we thought we had it figured out, and we've either lost money or broke even, and you go back to the drawing board and figure out that's not the right month or that's not the right classes, or if you can treat everybody, you think you treat everybody right, and you're not going to treat everybody right in their eyes, even though you thought you did. If you can go home at night knowing that you thought you gave everybody a level playing field, and out of 350 cars, you have 40 people mad at you, I don't think that's very bad odds.
Do you think that 40 in the public's eyes outweighs the other 400 people that enjoyed the show and had a great time?
Um, yes and no. I think the people that told you good job and didn't give you any backlash, whether they won or lost, are going to come back to you. But everybody wants to get on the internet and put their side of the story, and then people that didn't even come to your venue or never even ran for you, they're the first ones to chime on there that, yeah, I think you got dicked over, man. I wouldn't go back there. But they didn't put the whole story, and that guy doesn't know us, doesn't know inspection, doesn't know the venue, doesn't know anything at all. He just knows that his buddy had two cars push him up over the wall, and they're never coming back again. I don't think that's quite right, to post that. If you're going to post a story, post the whole thing on there.
So, how do you think that affects? Well, how do you fix that problem?
Um, I would say, I mean, there's really no fixing it because they can just go somewhere else. No promoter is on the same page with the other promoter as well. I mean, if we started you know, a list of people that just ran everybody in the dirt, people run me in the dirt this week. They run Josh into the dirt, which is my head inspector, next week. And now all of a sudden, this next promoter is the best thing. Everybody needs to come here. So they go there, and then they're there for a year, and then they don't like him. And now he's a no good person. Then they go to the next person. If all the promoters got together and found that this same individual you just can't make happy based on he got put over the wall, or you started the demo derby 10 minutes late, or the sun's not shining in the right spot today, my paint can't dry on my car, just don't come to any event at all. There's no accountability for that. I mean, I know other promoters look at my page, I look at their page, and I'm like, man, they just got ran down into the dirt. I was there at the Derby, saw the whole entire thing, and that person, in my eyes, as a promoter and driver, is in the wrong. They just come to my show like nothing ever happened, and knowing that they could probably do that to me because they've done that to 4 other people. That's a telltale sign that you just can't make that person happy in the demo world, whether it's me or any other promoter out there at all.
So, you brought up a very interesting point of if all the promoters came together. Do you think it's possible to bring all of the promoters together and form like a coalition of promoters where everybody's together and everybody makes decisions together?
Um, I mean, I think there's like a lot of arrogance and a lot of ego, just in my regular business that I do. You can call some tow companies and they won't even give a hand. Like it's business. It's no different than, you know, uh, a Starbucks opening up in your hometown and the place is packed, and you have another coffee shop that opens up next door. That coffee shop next door is going to do whatever they can possibly do to keep their doors open, whether it's cheaper coffee, better cups, whatever it might be. Those two people are competing together. Now, if they would just come together as two coffee shops and had the same coffee and offered the same cups, and maybe I'll close at 3 o'clock and you open up from 3 to 9, they both would make the same amount of money and they both would be successful because they're not fighting against each other all day, all night. But that's just business. I do it every day, live, breathe it every day. It's a cutthroat business. And, if they're not going to take care of you over there at that promotion, why don't you come over to mine? We'd allow those, hump plates. Don't worry about it. And all of a sudden, I'm the hero. And then a year later, they're mad at me and somebody else is the hero.
So, how do you think it's possible to get the promoters to leave the egos at the door and open up the coffee shops and start at 9 and start at 3?
I would say that as many people as there's demo, I mean, you got to think there's a lot of promoters that nobody even knows about that just do one or two derbies a year, or there's derbies that I haven't even heard of that are all across the United States. So I would think out of a lot of the promoters that you have, you should come up with 4 or 5 promoters that could put that aside and work with each other. And the ones that don't, they don't. I mean, I have tow companies that I do business with 100 miles away every single day. Now, you get 50 miles away, they won't do nothing for me, and I'm not even in their area. That's just the arrogance and ego thing that's in that. But with that, no driver is going to say, "Yeah, I'm going to go run these 5 promoters across the United States because they have the same set of rules." It's never going to work.
So, do you think it would be easier to work together, or do you think things will not work? Nobody will ever come together because it's easier to keep things the way they are?
I mean, I think some people are easy of it because you call someone for help or ask questions on this derby or that derby. Now, not every promoter is that way because I have promoter buddies that I talk to, a couple times a week. They call me with questions. I call them with questions. We, bullshit back and forth. But I mean, the only way you're going to have a true promoter and tech crew that has the same set of rules is for me to take and find 5 people that are on the same page with whether it's my bone stock rules because it's an easy build and you kind of have the same rules, but take out this, it would be the same. If I took 5 people and wrote the same set of rules and told them that I want their head inspector and another person, I'll give you $2,000 and a hotel. If I did that times 4 people and me being the 5th, I would have a hell of a tech crew for my show. And then we have 100 cars sign up. The next show, that promoter needs to do the same thing that I did. They need to give $2,000 and a hotel. And then me and Josh would go to, let's just say, Frankie Guy's Derby. Frankie Guy would pay me and Josh and whoever else is part of the 5 to tech that one class that has 100 cars. Because you would have the same tech and the same people looking at your cars all year long. You can't build a set of rules and go to my show and have my tech crew approve that bumper shock and how you did your cage and then go to New York with those same set of rules. They're going to interpret that a whole different way. So the only way that it would work is if you had the same 6 people at every show, and the promoter is going to have to cough up some money for that to make it happen. And it's going to cost the promoter $5,000 or $6,000 to get whoever's joining this one heat or one class, whatever you want to call it. They're going to have to spend $5,000 or $6,000, and I don't know if they would do that. But in the end, I know derby drivers in the beginning of the year, if they could run 6 shows for $10,000 or $20,000 to win, and they got the same 6 people to inspect their car, people would travel wherever. But the problem is they don't want to travel because they don't know what they're getting into when they get to the other end, which means they're probably not coming back because it's not the same atmosphere as it was last month in whatever state that we're in. Does that kind of make sense?
So, so you'd have your unit. So do you have your set of rules? Okay, so let me get this straight. So you'd have your set class, which let's say it's like your guys' Mayhem class, for example. Yep. We'll just call it the Mayhem rules. So you'll have your Mayhem rules.
We had a Mayhem class, and 4 other promoters had the same class I had, same amount of money, same spots paying back. You'd have the same tech crew. Those other promoters would just have to pay the tech crew to come there and inspect those cars, because you, as a driver, no matter if it's my show or the next 4 shows, it's the same exact people looking at your car.
I can say for 100% certainty if that was the case, even if it was like Dead Man, maybe that South Carolina show, Metal Mayhem, the Bash, maybe the Capital City Carnage, no matter how far away they were, if you were able to guarantee that like you'd have the same inspection, same payout, same class, it just a different locations. I think people from all around the world would chase, not all around the world, all around the country would chase that.
Yeah, I mean, they would know. And by your second or third show as a one heat or one class that these 4 or 5 people are involved, you would have 150, 200 cars. And by the time the third show happened, your inspection would be 100% spot on, because the people already know when they came the first time, I couldn't do my all thread that way, or I couldn't put my bumper bracket this way. So the second show, they've now fixed that. It's the same 6 people looking at their car. By the third show, you would be putting sticks on cars, because there'd be no gray areas. There would be no, this person interpreted it different in South Carolina. Dead Man said I had to cut that bumper bracket back off because it was crooked. Metal Mayhem said I could do my all thread this way in the trunk. There's just too many areas. When you have the same 6 people looking at the cars all year long, by year 2, I don't even think you would probably even have room for filler classes, because you would have 300 people wanting to have a fair shake with these 6 people all year long. But you're not going to get that unless you pay people to come do that. And I don't know if other promoters would do that.
So what would this hypothetical rule set look like? Would it be a more stock build, a more heavy build? Where do you think it would? What level do you think it would take place at?
I mean, I think you would probably have to figure out what promoters want to join this one class, or whatever you want to call it, and then whatever promoters wanted to join that. Let's say I said right now I want 4 people to call me by January 1st, and let's get this thing off the ground. So 4 people that can put their egos aside, forget about how big your promotion is. You just want cars and fans and put on a good derby. By January 1st, I need 4 people to call me. Those 4 people that reached out to me, we would have to gather up our head inspectors and say, what's your class that you have most cars with? It's a bone stock class. Okay, 3 people out of the 5 that are there, their bone stock class is the best build. The other 2 people, they allow tranny protectors and cradles, but their next class down doesn't allow that. Well, we have 3 against 2, basically. So if we can promise that we can put fair inspection on, and people want to run your kicker class, leave the money where it's at, but then add money to this other class, I think you would bring people out once people got word that there's 175 cars that came to Metal Mayhem for this deal. Dead Man had 175 cars. Sam Williams had 175 cars for this. I think by the time the promoter that has that one hot rod class that there's more in, I would think that their wire class would fill up, because you would have to, it would be a drive to chase a fair chance, if that makes sense.
That makes 100% chance.
Or if you have whatever promoters joined and they're all hard cars, then you start off with hard car. But whatever the rule set is, as long as you have the same 6 people that's inspecting the car, it doesn't really matter what the rule set is, whether it's compacts, vans, big cars, whatever the case might be. If you have the same 6 people looking at the cars all year long, you're getting the same interpretation of bumper shocks, motor, tranny, rear end, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it'd be very simple to align that with the same 6 people. I mean, anybody that has good successful shows, they go back because inspection was good and the atmosphere was good. Well, if you can take that inspection and that atmosphere and carry it on to Dead Man or Sam Williams or Tim Clark or whoever the promoters are, Frankie Guy, why wouldn't people want to have a fair chance? The reason they don't do that now is because if I went to a Dead Man show and I'm a builder, or Frankie Guy or Sam Williams, I would have to go to 3 or 4 of his shows to build a good quality car, because I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I don't know what I can get away with and I can't get away with, because I've went to derbies where I built by the rules, and I can tell you at the very end of it, that was not what I signed up for.
So do you think that this would have, like, in order to help promote this, do you think it could be aligned with like a point series just for that class? in a way, like how Mark Elliott has it, but just for that specific class. So even towards the end of the year, you would still, as another way to help unify it.
I mean, I would think the first deal would have to be to have 5 people on the phone at one time and order that out as far as rules and derbies before you got into the unified point series. I mean, then you're going back into you're adding so many things the first year. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just too many things to try to set together as business and focus on. You really need to focus on 5 people getting on the phone or even 10 people getting on the phone and saying, hey, let's make this work. Who do we need to call next? Who's in on doing this next? We have 4 people now. Let's make it 8 people. And then 8 people need to have their 2 top guys be the inspectors to do that. And then someone on here is probably already going to say, well, who has majority of vote when someone comes in with something weird on their car and there's 8 of you that's inspected all these cars all year long? At that time and point, we take a majority of vote. If 6 of us think that that bumper bracket is not going to work, then you've been overruled by the 8 people that showed up today. That's the easiest way to give someone a fair inspection all year round is have the same 8 people inspect that class, which means Dead Man, Frankie Guy, whoever's involved in this, Sam Williams, Tim Clark, whoever is going to have to pay people to come there to give the fans and the driver a fair shake.
So this so going off of this, so let's say hypothetically, let's say we can get this to work and we can get this to be an actual thing. Do you think that class will stay the same size it is, or do you think the size of that class will grow, or do you think that there will become a larger sanctioning body, or something like maybe?
I think it would grow. I mean, if you can promise me I can run 6 derbies a year for $10,000 or $20,000 first place, 10 grand second on down the line, and I'm going to get a fair shake. I mean, I don't see why people would want to go anywhere else when you have these same 5 promoters putting it all on the line, putting up, thousands and thousands of dollars for the fans and drivers to come. Why would you want to go somewhere else when I can just go to these 5 shows and I have the same guy looking at my car? You have the same guy that can tell me how I can mount my bumper on, how I can do my bumper bracket. You have the same guy telling me how I can put my engine in the car. And then you have the same guys on the phone the day of the derby. How many derbies have you been to when it's like, yeah, well, so-and-so said I could do this at the last derby. Well, who's that? Well, it was John. Well, John's a flagman. John shouldn't be telling you anything at all about how you can build your car. And now that guy's mad because John said he could mount his bumper this way, which he cannot do that. Now you have 4 people with messed up bumpers because John said so. When you do inspection, you need to have one person telling you what you can and can't do and text me pictures of what you want to do. So that way the day of, no, that is not going to work because what you texted me and what you did today are 2 totally different things. And there's only one person on the other end.
So if you could get this to work with, like, say, a few promoters, do you think this would grow into like a sanctioning body for the entire sport across the country?
I mean, I would think so because you're getting a fair shake. I mean, how many derbies have you drove hours and hours to and got your ass handed to you because the rules that you built for, those cars were just a little bit more? You know what I'm saying? It says no tilting, and you get, 7 hours away, and these cars are tilted because they just let it because there was 20 cars that were tilted, and we didn't want to send them home, so we let them run. Are you going to drive back next year 7 hours to that show?
Probably not.
You're not going to, I can assure you of that. That was 7 hours of wasted time and a wasted car, and you didn't tilt your car when you could have spent 4 hours tilting your car and making it right to compete, and you just drove there, and that's not right. That's just not right.
So, do you think in order to set the egos aside to make this work, do you think you'd have to have the support from the drivers to force the hand of people that's egos are too big to see the bigger picture?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the drivers are, somewhat to blame as well. I mean, how many drivers after a derby actually tell you what a great job you did? How many drivers actually share your stuff every day on Facebook? Like we have like 10,000 people, I think, on on our page. I have 5,000 on my own page. Josh has, thousands of people on his page. I would think anybody, whether it's, Sam Williams, Dead Man, Tim Clark, anybody that has that many people on Facebook and you put a flyer on there, how come an hour later there isn't 2,500 shares? I mean, that ratio is kind of crazy when you have 10,000 followers and you can't get 2,500 people that have their phone in their hand all day. They can't just hit one button to support you. But then they're at your show and they love your show, and I'll be back next year. But why couldn't you do that? Or anybody that bought a ticket for a show, why can't they post, hey, friends and family, come to Metal Mayhem or Dead Man or Sam Williams, whoever the promoter is, why can't they put that on Facebook? Hey, come here and watch me run. We might end up with an extra 300 people there to where we could invest back in the sport. I mean, when Derby Icons ran 10 years ago, and then they ran 5 years ago and 3 years ago, we've paid more money owning Derby Icons than it ever has before. Just because I know that what we brought in, I can pay the drivers back more money. That is a true fact, 100%. Maybe not every single show has that big dollar amount on there, but our team show, it used to pay $8,000, $4,000, $2,000 5 years ago. Then they bumped it to $10,000. After the 2 years I've owned it and I've seen the support that we've had, first place is $20,000, $10,000 on down. I mean, just because I know that we can pay that by the support that we had.
That makes total sense.
Which we would be able to pay more money if more people shared the flyer, more people said, come to Spring Explosion this weekend, or come to whatever promotion company is doing that. If you have people following you and doing you the right thing and you're helping other people, you're going to succeed no matter what. I mean, if you opened up a coffee shop and there's 1,000 people there a day, you're going to make it. But how'd you get those 1,000 people?
So, this conversation, and I could be wrong, but I believe when it comes to promoters, I believe this is the most plain out and simple way to put it. Do you think that the business side of it is the side that most people don't see, but is by far the most important piece of it all that everybody seems to be missing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and I mean, there's tons and tons of things you have to do before you even put a derby on that people don't realize. I mean, you have to rent a venue, you have to get insurance, you have to find a fire department, you have to find an ambulance department, you have to find a trash company, you have to find skid steers, you have to build a track, you have to make sure your traffic control is coming through there and everybody's not bound together. You have to find a tech crew that's going to treat everybody fair. I mean, there's 25 huge things before the first person even buys it or even signs up.
So do you believe that's one of the reasons derbying is, promoters don't want to come together because it is such a cutthroat and risky business?
No, I just think that some people just kind of think that, I got the biggest, baddest show around. Why do I need your help to improve 60 more cars and X amount of dollars when I have 500 cars at my show right now? Well, yeah, that's very true, and you probably have a waiting list, but if you're truly for the drivers and you're truly trying to better the sport and you're truly trying to get people together, I would think you would need a helping hand. I mean, nobody in business can do it all on their own, and nobody in business can take it all on their own and be huge without help and fans and drivers. And why wouldn't you want two people coming together or 5 people together combining one thing that could be huge?
So hypothetically, let's say this works. Where do you see derbying at in 10 years if this works?
Well, hopefully we still have cars around in 10 years, or it's going to be compacts only that are plastic.
We'll be derby in aluminum trucks. That's pretty much the next thing.
I mean, that I don't have an answer for because, who knows what derbying's going to do in 5 years? What are county fairs and, promoter's going to do. You know, you put on a couple bad shows a year. I mean, some people can't turn back from that. I mean, there's no way. I've been to shows where I've lost thousands of dollars wondering, what am I even doing? I've been here for a week straight. I set up the track, got everybody in here, got them parked, paid everybody that came, paid people that worked for me that came, and I'm literally negative thousands of dollars. What am I even doing this for?
So what makes you continue to do it?
Just I've been a driver myself and realized that you go to some derbies and get the shaft and they don't pay the right money and do the right thing for the drivers. So that kind of gets me back into the passionate side of, you know, what can we do or change to make it fair and make it fun for everybody.
So basically, the reason you do it is because you've seen what's out there, and as a driver, you want to be the promoter that you would want to run for.
Yeah, I basically started promoting because we went to a county fair over and over and over and over and always got the shaft. The inspection was garbage. I mean, it was just terrible. And I just got fed up one day and said, you know what? I think I'm just going to put one show on the same day or close to that county fair and just see what happens. And I went around to the people that were kind of, you know, mad at the fair. They didn't pay enough money. They didn't pay this. The fair board wouldn't do anything. And we put a derby on the same day. I went out on a limb, you know, put up the money, built the track, got insurance, fire department, whole 9 yards. Now, we're not talking like a Metal Mayhem style or anything like that. We basically made our own county fair in county fair season, and we did really well with it. And then I think some county fairs kind of thought like, wow, you know, they got something going on. What did they do? Well, we just treated people fair, the best that we could do. And it's a business as well. I mean, people don't understand that as well. I mean, people say, you know, well, you had the grandstands full and you had, you know, 400 cars there. Oh, you must have made millions of dollars. Well, if I made millions of dollars, that purse on the flyer would be 5 times that. I can assure you of that if I made millions of dollars. But people forget that, you know, to rent a skid steer for the weekend is $800 and you need 5 of those. To rent the venue is $15,000. To pay your inspection crew and your people that help you is, you know, a huge investment as well. So you might have 40, 50, $60,000 out before you even make a dime, and you put a purse out there. But people don't realize that.
So do you think the key to the longevity of a good promoter is reminding yourself why you're doing it and keeping the good intentions and the overall view that I want to keep the drivers happy and I want it to be a great promotion for any driver to come and run for? Do you think that's the key in trying to make sure you don't find yourself trapped in a greed or?
I mean, that's the key in any business. I mean, if you're just going to put, you know, if you're not calling your customers or reaching out to your customers or going to events and asking them how they're doing and, you know, what could we change in the future or what would you like? I mean, if you don't contact your clientele, I'm not saying that I can contact everybody that comes to Spring Explosion and fans and vendors and all that, but I think me and Josh try to do the majority of part of, you know, repeat customers and what kind of vendors do you want here? And if you're just not making calls and treating people right, you're not going to be in business at all. I don't care what kind of business you're in, period. If you're not picking up the phone and asking, you know, you were at this coffee shop for months, why didn't you come back? Well, I come in there one day and my coffee was cold. You know, if you're not making those calls, you just lost one guy. Now you've lost 10 people. Now you've lost 30 people. I mean, you can't fix everybody's problems that come to your event because that's just human nature. You just can't make everybody happy. But there's some things that you can fix of why didn't you come back or why won't you come run? Well, I don't like your rules. Well, just so happens we have 20 other people that don't like our rules either. And that's just, you know, that's just how we are. We're not going to change for 20 people. You know, that's just in the promotion world. You can't just build a class for 20 cars and say, you know, forget the people that's been here that, you know, appreciate what we're doing, you know.
That's Great point. Somebody in the chat just asked not too long ago, what is one of the main differences between the insurances of like a Metal Mayhem and then a regular county fair?
Insurances kind of go on like how many classes you're having and how many attendants you're having there and how many days you're having it as well.
So is that one of the like how hard is it to find the right insurance for a show?
Well, I mean, if you have a regular business and you pay people and it's like a regular business, then you have regular insurance like you would at your regular company. It's not just like people just show up and work for you and they go home. I mean, we have a regular crew that we pay people per day, per hour, whatever the case might be. So I mean, that's a little bit different, I think, and maybe some people's world versus our world. We try to do things 100% by the book.
Do you think that's the key to keeping it in the longevity is maintaining pure intentions then? Keeping it legit and stuff like that?
I think so too. I mean, if you're going to put, you know, it's like any business. If you're going to put effort in and you plan to stick out and be around for a while, you need to be doing something different, and you need to be treating people right. Which you can't treat everybody right. People just some people just don't mix together. They're hot and cold. You just physically can't make them happy. It doesn't matter what you do. I've even called people back that, I mean, for instance, we sell truck parking spots to stand around the track, and it rained real bad, and there was truck parking spots along the side of the guardrail. So the semi guy, I didn't want people to park there because they kept getting stuck and it was just nasty and rainy and wet. Well, this semi guy has a semi, and he backed his semi across there, and I went and found the people that had their trucks and said, "Hey, you paid for a truck parking spot. I can't get your trucks in there because it's muddy, cold, nasty. It's just not going to work. But the semi guy has offered to put his flatbed semi up there. And if you have a tent, you could put a tent just like where your truck goes on his trailer. And on top of that, the next year that we have truck parking, I will try to make it right with you one way or another since you can't sit in the back of your truck. But the semi guy offered to put his flatbed trailer there, and you have a 10 by 10 tent, which I think a 10 by 10 tent is probably better than your truck because you can sit underneath the tent when it's pouring down rain and snowing out. I was the worst person ever because they bought $100 ticket to park their truck there, and I want to park my truck there. I'm never coming back here ever again because I can't park my truck there. I just gave you, and the semi guy gave you, a better option than putting your truck there. Some people you just can't reason with, like that's just crazy to me.
So how many times when you're putting on these big shows throughout the year do situations like that happen?
I would say you probably have 20 just off the wall, just off the wall stuff, like I didn't read the flyer, but I came on Friday and I can't come Saturday, but I want to watch the feature. I'm never coming back here again. Okay, well, that's not my fault. I mean, you should have read the flyer. We run heat races or whatever we had on Friday, and we do this on Saturday. I mean, some people you just can't help. And I know other promoters are in the same boat with some people you just can't make them happy.
Which that makes complete sense. Do you think you try to make them happy, or do you think you just accept the fact you just this guy's crazy and you'll never be able to make him happy?
I mean, we're pretty level-headed, and after one conversation, if we can't make you happy or come to a mutual agreement, I mean, obviously I can't make you happy. There's just physically no way. I look at it as a business. I don't want anybody leaving here mad, pissed off, never coming back. Like, the reason we can do this and the fans and the drivers and the venue is because people come there. The last thing I want is people to leave. But I can't fix that you didn't read the flyer and you showed up on Friday, but you were originally going to come on Saturday. I can't fix that. I mean, there's people that send me a message on Facebook or, put online, yeah, the promoter just walked right by me and I said, hey, and he didn't even say hi. Well, I just had a car roll over and I'm trying to get to the track, to make sure that everything's okay. And you waved at me. I didn't see you. I mean, there's 5,000 people here and I didn't see you. I mean, you can come up and talk to me anytime, but at that moment, as a promoter, I have a lot more things to worry about than, you know, trying to say hi to you when I have a car rolled over on the track and I want to make sure they're safe. You know, it's just little things like that. I don't think people take consideration that, man, this guy's on a mission. I can tell he's on a mission because he's walking fast and he's on the radio and, you know, he didn't say hi to me. Shame on him. I mean, it's just kind of crazy, you know?
Is that a true story? Did somebody actually get mad because you didn't say hi to him?
Yeah. Or you were in inspection, you know, like you're in inspection and, you know, you didn't talk to me very long. Like, what's wrong with you? It's like nothing. We have 350 cars to inspect. I'm stressed out. You know, Josh has people all the time with, you know, some little dumb remark like, oh, you got time for me today? Well, it's like, no, I got 400 cars to inspect. I'm kind of irritated because I've talked to, you know, 300 people today about what I'm doing wrong. We should allow this. We should do this. Taylor should do this. You should start at this time and you should do this. And at the very end of the day, I'm kind of like, well, why don't you go find $100,000, put up the risk, build the venue, and I'll be your first supporter and come run your show if you have it figured out. Because there's not a promoter at all that has it figured out 110%. Because if they did, they would have 2,000 cars and we would be demoing for 7 days straight. And there's not a promoter that's doing that.
Do you think that nobody wants to take the accountability to look, or nobody wants to view any situation from a different perspective, and that's why a lot of that stuff happens?
I think so. I think people are just, you know, some people you just can't make happy. It's just the type of person they are, or I don't know. I mean, you know, it's like, it's just their attitude and there's no fixing that, you know?
I completely agree with you. So, one of the questions that's been pretty hot on the internet recently is like NASCAR. Could you ever see Demolition Derby becoming a sport like NASCAR? Well, Don Santel said a sport like dirt track.
I would say it would probably be more closer to dirt track because you have a different clientele of people that do dirt track stuff. Plus, we don't have huge sponsors. I mean, if, you know, promotion companies like myself and everybody else that's doing that, if Monster gave us $500,000, I would think we could be closer to NASCAR because we're paying $250,000 to win Metal Mayhem. You would have 800 cars there and you would have 20,000 fans in the grandstand. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts. But we don't have that kind of, you know, sponsorship and people helping us lead the way, like, you know, ESPN or, you know, a sports channel that takes that on. I mean, they're making huge sponsor money to dump back into that sport for the fans and the drivers and all that. I mean, if you get, you know, 800 cars on one derby track, you're going to have 20,000 people there that's supporting you. You can do something with 20,000 people there.
Why do you think the huge sponsors like NASCAR and not NASCAR, like Monster and guys like those, why do you think that we never see them getting involved with the sport of Demolition Derby?
Well, for one, most people signify derby drivers as, you know, dirt bags and people that don't pay their bills and, you know, people that build in their garage on old raggedy cars and they're just dirt bags. I mean, how many times have you heard someone call someone a dirt bag that derbies, or, you know, what is demo derby? There's not enough demo derby drivers making an impact for ESPN or a sports channel to take them on. I mean, if ESPN came on and said, hey, we want to do a 6 month, they've already done this in the past and it didn't work because there's not enough viewers to air it online. You can't air 400 people watching demo derby on a small clientele on ESPN. They can put soccer on there or football or basketball and have 1 million people watching that night and paying for that because it's a different clientele of people. There's not enough volume there to push that, or we would be there.
Do you think the volume, how do you think you grow the volume so something like that is possible?
I would think all the drivers and the fans need to share flyers and post more derby pictures and more, you know, venues. And then maybe someone needs to do someone needs to start a podcast, or someone needs to start some kind of, you know, not a waiver, but like a petition that we have, 700,000 people that want to watch Demo Derby on ESPN. Can you please do a 6-month viewing and we'll pay $50 a piece? They need something to prove to them because they're in business too. They're not going to air something that's going to flop. I mean, why do you think some TV shows last for 10 or 20 years and some TV shows run one season and yeah, it was great, but there was not enough views there watching that video that night. Does that kind of make sense?
Makes 100% sense. So you think in order for this to grow, not only do the promoters and how do you think the promoters coming together can affect this in the long run?
Well, I mean, if you had 4 or 5 promoters together and maybe 4 or 5 promoters cut back on some of the events they do and got together as some kind of partnership and only had 7 big derbies a year that could pay, if I cut back on my events and I had help from other people and one of our shows was a partner 5-way split, I would think 5 people could come up with $250,000 in a purse and still make a little bit of money. And you would have 1,000 cars there and you would have 10,000, 20,000 fans there. And everybody would be successful. The drivers, the fans, the promoter, everybody. But instead, we're all fighting to put another show on because our last show, we had great car count, but the rained that night. So, I broke even. Hopefully I have another event and I can come ahead a couple $1,000, here or there.
So going back to the TV thing, so is that one of the reasons you think that like mainstream television hasn't came back to the sport since like a very long time ago? Because I remember ESPN did something like that. There was a few others that live streamed the huge events they had like back in the early 2000s, late 90s and stuff like that. Do you think the main reason that is because the fans just don't share it enough and don't like help
I don't think
promote
they
it?
share it enough, and I think there's a different clientele. I mean, look at NASCAR with, 15 years ago. I mean, the Daytona 500 was completely packed all the way around, campers forever down the midway. I mean, it was the Daytona 500 was the show to come hang out with for a week straight and cook out and grill and families. But all those people that did that 10 or 15 years ago, they're out of the scene of race cars and doing all that. They have families now and jobs and they're older and they can't just go do that. Who's next in line to go to the Daytona 500 and pack the place? You look at it now on TV, it's nowhere near what it looked like 10 years ago. If you had an aerial shot of the Daytona 500 from now until 10 years ago, you would probably be like, holy cow, where's everybody at? Even though it still looks packed, because you can see that there's visible people in the stands. But if you had an aerial shot of that, you would probably be amazed at how many people are actually there versus 10 years ago till now. There's just not enough people in the demo world for someone to come on like ESPN or a channel for a good sponsor to give back to the drivers and the fans worth their time.
So why? Well, that's a completely different topic, but we can go into that too. So why do you think that decline in NASCAR has happened, like the Daytona 500?
I just think it's a different clientele of people now. Your younger people don't. I mean, I own a tow company, and I have people that call me that are 18 to 30 years old that can't change their tire. They can't even get their hood open. This is true story, man. I'm telling you. So you take all the demo people and all the NASCAR people from 15 years ago that were diehard hot rods in the garage, motorcycles, traveled around to NASCAR or demo derbies or motorsports. All those people are dwindling away because they're older and they have responsibilities and families and jobs and they're retiring. I don't want to go to NASCAR. I want to go on my boat all weekend. The younger generation, they don't care about motorsports. You have very few. I'm not saying they don't care because we have a lot of youth drivers. I know Frankie Guy has youth drivers, but you take the youth drivers that we have in the top 20 promoters across the United States, you probably have 300 youth drivers that can actually change their own tire and put their own battery in their car. Those 300 people 10 years ago was probably 5,000. If I couldn't change my tire on my bicycle at 16 years old, I just wouldn't have a bike to ride. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way it was back then. I mean, you knew how to change your tire. You knew how to put a battery in your car. Nowadays, the younger generation, they can't do anything. If it doesn't have a phone, if they can't figure it out on an app to change a tire, it ain't going to happen. And they're not going to do it manually either. If that app won't physically go on there and change their tire and take the lug nuts off by pushing a couple buttons on their phone, it's not getting changed. You call roadside assistance.
So why do you think that huge change in even society has happened?
Just technology, and the younger generation doesn't care about motorsports. They're on their phone, they're on their tablets, they're on, that's just what we have become. As I shit you not, we have people daily that can't get their hood open to jumpstart their car. They can't change their own tire. It's just crazy.
Well, this is going to be a fun lifetime for me.
That's the true story. It's just, and then when we do open their hood, how do I do a jump start? That also goes back to how they were raised. You know what I'm saying? Your motorsport people, they taught their kids how to change a tire and change their bicycle chain and do all those things mechanically. Those people are already gone. And if they don't have brothers and sisters to lead that on, then you come up with a lawyer that never changed their tires. I never had to. I always paid for it. And my son, he doesn't know anything about cars because I don't know anything about cars. You're not going to find a demo person. You might have one or two lawyers that demo, but the majority of the people that do demo derby, they got that somewhere from their family member. They didn't just wake up and thought, I'm a lawyer at age of 25 and I want to start demo derby. I think it looks cool. They probably don't even know what a demo derby is.
So do you think, with that being said, do you think in the future, we're going to have a lack of drivers and a lack of just spectators in general?
Oh yeah, we have that now.
So
if you don't have, if you book an event and you have 200 cars there, you're going to have less than 2,000 people there. Just with all the events going on year round, people just don't drive, and there's not enough people in the demo world community to hit every demo derby and do that. I can remember 10 years ago, we drove 5-6 hours multiple times a month to go to a demo derby. I can't do that now with work and all that. It's just a different time of error to do that. But if you book an event with 200 cars at it, you're not going to have 2,000 people there if you're in the middle of summer. It just isn't going to happen because people don't travel. They can't take time off work. There's too many derbies. That's just life.
So how do you think, like streaming the derby, like Derby Tees and then other streaming companies like that, how do you think they affect that?
Those numbers, I'm sure you could ask Mark Klein 5 years ago, what was Metal Mayhem and Blizzard Bash and all these big derbies, what was the people that viewed that till now? I guarantee you the numbers are low.
I always thought
not low, but they're not what they was 5 or 10 years ago. I can remember 5 years ago, I watched Derby Tees 3 or 4 times a month. I don't do that now because I don't have the time. I'm only one viewer. How many other people have families and, working overtime to build a new engine or, whatever the case might be. It's just a different time of error of doing that.
I always thought that, like, people that didn't go to the show and watch, that the reason, like, when you go to shows like King of Ohio this year, that just the crowd isn't there. I always thought they were always watching on Derby Nation. So you think that's not the case either?
It depends on what they've done the week before and how many demos they went to the week before. There's just too many big demos, to go to every single one of them. So if more promoters came together, we would probably be better on some classes because maybe I won't have a couples class, but we can go together on a couples class in October. I put up half the money, you put up half the money. We get 200 cars there because they're not trying to compete from going to 5 demos in the middle of summer.
So it goes back to the same coffee shop analogy you went to earlier. If we come together, which going off of that though, do you think the amount of shows this like that happen every year, whether it be big shows or county fairs, do you think that hurts the sport?
I mean, your county fairs are always going to be there. I mean, I told you earlier that guy that gave $200 that says Jim's painting on the side of his front fender. He's going to that county fair where he was born and raised. There's no getting him away from there. You can tell him you will give him $1,000 and a brand new car and free pit passes, and he's not coming to your event. He is going to that Podunk County Fair to win $600 because Jim gave me $200 to put his name on the car, and I got 40 people in the grandstands that's cheering me on. I feel like those 40 people and yourself, you should save your car, come to my show or whoever is treating you more fair, not just me, and you should support them with pit passes times 40 people, and that promoter could pay more money. But instead, basically, you took 40 people in your car to a show that paid you 600, 300, 100. That makes no sense to me.
Which that obviously that will never change.
No, you will never change that at all. I'm telling you, you could give away free entry fee to the whole demo and free pit passes, and they are still going down the road.
So, this is a little bit different, but I think it's important too. Do you think that amongst drivers there is a lack of competition in a way?
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants competition either. I mean, you could probably pay, I don't know, probably $50,000 and you try to get the top 150 people to come run. It's not always about money. I mean, nobody wants to run against 150 people that are on the same playing field as them. That's just how it is.
That's exactly what Dustin Woods is figuring out right now.
I mean, it's not about the money. I put on county fairs where I paid very little compared to the week before. I paid triple that, and the grandstands are packed. We got 200 cars at a county fair and demoed all night. The week before, I lost $4,000, and it was only 20 miles down the road.
So why do you think that that nobody wants to have that competition nowadays? What do you think has changed?
I don't think anybody wants to really derby. They want to just, everybody wants to be the best, and I got the best parts, the best rear end, the best dry shaft, the best front bumper, but nobody wants to use all that stuff. I mean, why not? Why has a promoter not said, I want to do free entry fee, and I want the best of the best. I want 50 of you for 20,000. I'll pay everybody. It doesn't matter. I want to know who the best of the best is. If everybody wants $4,000 to win, and there's 20 cars out there, 30 cars out there, you wouldn't fill it.
Dustin, that is the exact same. What you are describing right now is the same thing Dustin Woods has went through, because his first show, I think it was his first show, I believe he had I think it was no entry fees. And even still, he did the format. Which, are you familiar with that? How he has that set up?
Yeah, but nobody wants to run that format. You know what I'm saying? Very little people want to go out there and take a chance on tearing their whole car up to run that format for no matter what kind of money. Even if he reversed that and said, I'll pay $50,000 and put 15 of you in a heat race, you still wouldn't it still wouldn't fill, because people just don't want competition. No different than, when you sign up for a show and you post a driver's list, there'll be comments of like, oh, I'm not going there because so-and-so signed up. Who cares if so-and-so signed up? Why don't you go out there and take so-and-so out? Quit commenting on Facebook all the time that, oh man, that guy's going to win that show. Everybody lets him drive around. Why don't you and your buddies fix that problem? The promoter cannot go out there and physically make you make an aggressive hit when you're doing your own wheelman stuff and you're out there scraping paint, hitting a fender, bouncing off a door, not tearing your car up. Everybody wants to win. Promoter can't go out there and start breaking sticks because I feel like you should 100 mile an hour drive up in the back of that guy. You wouldn't have no cars that came back to your show if you were that way. The drivers need to help the promoter if they want something to change. And they don't do that. They let people drive around all night and then they talk about it on the internet. Well, you were in the same heat as him. Why did you take him out? I don't know.
So that's one thing about like you that I've noticed that's been completely different is so your features this year. How long was the feature at Metal Mayhem this year?
You don't even want to know. Three and a half hours.
So what is how do when as the promoter, how does that affect like the show and how do you think that affects everything?
I mean, the people in the grandstands are pissy because, they're not out there hitting and, I paid to watch a demo and yada, yada, yada. But in my eyes, as a driver, when it comes down to the top 10, the 10th place guy isn't going to win if he starts full tracking people. No different is the 5th place guy right now because they're going to trash their car and not win. So why do they want to be the first one to jump the gun and do that? Because they're going to end up in 9th place or 10th place or whatever place they're in. So I mean, that's why I think Dustin does his format because you kind of eliminate the politicking and you only have 15 to 20 cars in a feature, which shouldn't take 3.5 hours to finish off. But as a promoter, you can't go out there and start snapping off sticks left and right from Jump Street because they're not going to come back and run your derby because you told them how to hit. So you're kind of stuck in the middle as a promoter of trying to please the fans, trying to please the drivers. And, for that 3.5 hours, they were hitting. Just so happens they just didn't tear their cars up. They were hitting in you have the top 10 best drivers in many, many states away that have been running Metal Mayhem for 20 plus years. As a driver and a promoter, you can't stand there and expect, Vic Whaley, Bob Whitaker, Don Santel, Terry Timmons, Chad Weir. I mean, there's tons of people that were out there that you can't expect them to pull in the corner and just nose it out when it gets down to the last 5. That's just not going to happen at any derby. So as a promoter, we're like, well, as long as you're making an aggressive hit, no big deal. But everybody's bumper was raised up 6-7 inches. So when they try to hit you in the tire and you got a 14-inch tire, you can't even hit their wheel. So you're kind of stuck in the middle of trying to please the fans, please the drivers. I mean, I think it was a long feature. Yeah. But were they hitting? Yeah. It wasn't like it was a Cupid shuffle and they were just scratching paint. They were driving around, bumping off each other, backing into each other. Could they hit a little harder? But who's going to hit harder and take 10th place? Because they're trying to win. Are you?
Not at all.
No.
I'm rubbing doors with Don all night long.
Yeah, so you have to wait for the first person to either lose their cool or you have to wait for it to get rowdy. And believe it or not, when that rowdy time came, the derby that had been lasting for probably an hour and a half of them just driving back and forth and around and scraping doors and hitting wheels and pushing people sideways and making it look good because they're all prime time drivers to make it look good. They know what they're doing. They know what they can get away with, what they can't get away with. When it got rowdy time, the derby was over in 4.5 minutes. Because at that time as a driver, when there's 5 cars left and some dude just pillar parks clear up in the back of somebody, that first, second, third, fourth guy's looking around like, okay, if I don't start doing something, that could have been me because now there's only 4 cars left. So now once you get down to the money, it's do or die because what are you going to do? You can't just do that all night because you're going to end up in 4th place, 3rd place, 2nd place, 1st place. And literally it was over in 4.5 minutes.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
So when you guys are on the wall and your officials are on the wall, how do you guys yell at people for bagging or how do you guys address that?
I mean, we go out there and paint on your car and say, hey, pick the pace up, spin a donut, go to the other end of the track, quit staying in the same spot. That's a dead giveaway that, people around you can see what's happening. Go to the other end, spin a donut, push someone sideways. If we have to come out here and do that 2 or 3 times, yeah, we are going to break your stick 100%. But after we go out there and warn you and you spin 3 donuts and bounce off somebody and shove somebody sideways and go to the other end, what can I be mad about? You know what I'm saying? You did what I asked you to do. What do we do now?
So as long as you're trying to basically make it look like you're not doing nothing, is which that's I've been to a lot of shows like that. I've been thrown out for bagging, and in my eyes, I didn't think I was bagging, but in their eyes, I guess I was. Which, I mean, then again, I guess it all depends on the perception of the situation. You know, like not a lot of promoters look at the way of addressing bagging the same way you do. Tim Clark, he goes out there and sprays for cockroaches. I guess it all kind of just depends on the situation.
I mean, there's a time to do that and not a time to do that. And I guess if you have a big enough waiting list and you feel like that day. I mean, there's lots of times that I do things that after the show I've kind of thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or maybe I could have handled that a different way. I'm very easy to get along with, and then sometimes I am the worst person to get along with based on, what happens at that time and point. But yeah, I can't answer that question as far as was it right, was it wrong, but everybody kind of has their own feel of what sandbagging is and what isn't.
So let's see. So going off of that, what are some of the similarities between having your guys on the wall and having your guys in the inspection line? Do you think that helps in the long run, or do you think it doesn't really matter?
As far as what?
When you have the same guys in the inspection line as you had on the wall.
Yeah, so my same inspectors are my flagmen. So I think you get the same respect to the driver as I inspected your car, and I'm watching you drive your car, and they're checking your car afterward. You have the same people meeting you 3 times at this event versus some flagman that's like doesn't know you or or whatever. They don't even have to know you. You just have the same respect level of I inspected your car and I watched you drive your car and I re-inspected your car. Who doesn't want the same person doing business with them all the time?
Sounds great to me. I mean, I've been to a lot of shows where it's 3 different people that I've never seen in my life all the way throughout the experience. So how important is organization throughout the event in order for it to be a great event?
I mean, you have to have people parking right. You have to get them crammed together. You have to have nice flow of traffic. You have to have, your driver's meeting, your car's inspected at a right time. Your driver's meeting needs to be on time. And, how many derbies have you been to where they're like, oh man, I'm not going back there. They started 15 minutes late. Yeah, I also did start 15 minutes late, but we also inspected 400 cars and built the track and gave you a hell of a venue, and you're going to argue over 15 minutes? How long have you been here before the Derby started? How many times did you walk by the same vendors and didn't buy nothing from the vendors over and over and over again before the Derby even started? And you're going to cry about 15 minutes? Come on.
Point made.
And another thing that we do different is how many derbies have you been to that you get there at 9 o'clock in the morning, you walk by all the vendors, you go by and bullshit with the same friends, the same people, look at the same cars, and the derby doesn't start till 6 o'clock at night.
A lot of them, to be honest with you.
So we don't do that. If we have time to run, we run. So Friday, we run at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. Most people would wait till 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. We don't do that. If we have downtime, we're running cars or we're inspecting cars. That's just the way it is, because I cannot stand going to a derby and being there all day Friday and then all day Saturday, and the derby don't start till 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock on Saturday. Drivers want to get in, get out when they're gone from home for 2 or 3 days. You could be running filler classes or doing something on downtime instead of just sitting in the grandstands or sitting back there with your pit crew. It's cold, rainy, tired. Fix your car 2 or 3 times. They want to go home. Get in, do the show, run what you can, and go home. And people send me text messages. I have never been home after a demo derby before midnight. Thanks for doing that. Only way I could do that was start earlier.
So your mindset going into a show is basically we're going to get this done as efficiently, as fair, and as well as we can do it, as fast as we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, people got families and kids and homes and jobs and everything else to go to. I mean,
So
yeah, they're coming there to support you, but they also need to get home on Sunday or Monday and get back to work and get back to reality and unload their car and clean their shop, and the list goes on. And I just know that's because when I go somewhere and I'm gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's like I truly only demoed for 8 hours, but I've been here since Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because we demoed 4 hours on Friday night, 4 hours on Saturday night, and I've been here all weekend. I'm ready to go home. I'm bored.
So does that same mindset travel over from your business and your business ventures like that?
Well, probably because, owning a tow company, you're 24/7, 365. And when the phone rings, you go, like there's no downtime in the towing world. It's not like a coffee shop that's open from 8 to 5. And after 5 o'clock, the phone doesn't ring. There's no coffee to be made, no nothing. My phone rings all day, all night, and got multiple people driving trucks, and, it's just crazy.
That's so. What other things have you learned from business that you have applied to like derby promotion that's helped you be so successful?
Probably have a little patience and treat people with respect and treat people how you want to be treated.
Hmm. Going back to it, how many big shows have you went to that just you couldn't believe it, and then you went back to your shows, and that gave you motivation to put on a better show?
Uh, I would say probably a handful. And it's just because I didn't go to that show enough. Like I said, no true demo guy or builder, they're going to have to go to a show at least 3 times to really be able to compete, because they don't know me. They don't know Josh. They don't know the inspection. They're going off that paperwork offline of the rules, and they don't trust nobody. No demo derby driver trusts any promoter unless they've been there multiple times and they know what they're getting into. That's why people don't travel. And if you do travel, you have to travel 3 or 4 times to figure out how you can build a car, how you're being treated, and so on and so forth. And most people don't go back after that.
So why do you think that, like, how do I say this? Do you think that if you have a strong set of rules that prevents a lot of those problems?
Um, I mean, I think if you had a strong set of rules and more people followed you with multiple people on board, I think it would do some good. But just as necessarily of having a strong set of rules and being thorough, you would still have to come to my event 2 or 3 times to get trust.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, nobody's just gonna. I mean, even if I paid $100,000, I still wouldn't pack the place the first year. I would have to take a loss for a year or two and maybe get, let's just say, for instance, I would get 50 cars. People would talk about it. I went to Metal Mayhem. Josh worked through the inspection, didn't nitpick my car away, that things that aren't going to make a difference for me to win. Taylor was great. On the way out, he, thanked me for coming, gave me a handshake, and I'm going back the next year. He would probably tell 10 or 15 people. The next year, I would end up with maybe 75, 100 cars. And then by year 3, if I continued all of that and didn't piss a bunch of people off and inspection was great, by year 3, the place would be packed, because then they would get your trust. But it would take some years to get that. If you put a demo derby on and you're at year 3 or 4 and you haven't really made any ground, the chances of you making ground are very slim, because people don't trust you. No different than that's any business at all. No different than any place that you work at.
I can 100% agree with that, because there's been shows that I went to for like one of the first years they had it, got treated terribly, never went back, and that show failed not too many years after that. Which I almost think in the early years of it, you can tell how the show will end up in the next few years. Do you agree with that in a way?
I do. I mean, as long as you're consistent and have the same clientele of people. And what kills a show is when you have a new inspector. If anybody's been following you for 3 or 4 years, they know what they can get away with. They know what they can get away with pushing the rules or the little nitty gritty stuff that isn't going to win the Derby at all. If you change an inspector 3 years in and you've had 150 cars that 3 years, your fourth year, you're either going to get more cars or that fourth year, you're going to get 75 because you pissed off half the field with your new inspector nitpicking shit that I've been doing for 3 years. So and so let me do that. I can weld my door handle shut. Welding your door handles closed with a piece of metal is not going to win the Derby. You know what I'm saying? Your inch by 2 inch stitch welds on the door. If you put 2 inch patches to weld your door seams on there, that's not going to win the Derby. And if someone's been doing that for 3 years and it's never been a problem, and all of a sudden the fourth year, this guy's like, you need to cut a 1/4 inch off each one of your 2x2 squares on your doors, they're probably not coming back because that's just a waste of torches and a waste of time. That's not going to win or make or break the Derby.
That, yes, just yes. The amount of, when I go, it's the stuff that just doesn't matter, but it's a pain. It's a pain in the ass to cut. When
Yeah, I mean, if your cage is supposed to be 60 inches and it's 61 and it's not touching the firewall forward and it ain't touching the humps in the back, and you just found a piece of square tube that you can physically tell you cut out of a car, who cares? I'm not going to make you cut an inch off over the top of your battery box and cause you to catch fire over a 1/2 inch because you grab some piece of metal out back, or your hood plate's not a 5x5, it's a 4x5. Well, you can't run that. Like, that's nitpicking stuff that is not going to win the Derby, that I feel like probably pisses a lot of drivers off when you go somewhere.
So why do you think a lot of like head inspectors and a lot of guys like that, why do you think they be so nitpicky about stuff like that?
I think they have the mentality of, I mean, you'd have to get Josh on here and he could give you a whole slew of inspection and people and their thoughts and all that. But I think they hold those rules in their hand and the drivers are trying to get around the rules. So then the inspector is trying to throw it back in their face like, oh, okay, you want to interpret that bumper bracket the wrong way. Your doors are supposed to be 2x2 strips and only 36 inches on the doors, and you have 2x3 and you have 45 inches. So they're going to make you cut a couple inches off each one. I just think it's a back and forth thing, and we just don't do that. Like, if it's not going to make or break it, and it's something like what I just said in that scenario, I mean, that's just going to piss people off. I've been in numerous shows where I've had somebody in the shop that doesn't even run demo cars, and I'm like, hey, cut these door weld brackets, strips, whatever you want to call them, cut them by 2x3. Well, they cut it by 2.5x3, or one's 2, or one's, they just ran them through the chop saw and just ran them out. I get there and they're taking a tape measure. You're going to have to cut a 1/4 inch off that one, cut an inch off that one. No, get out of here. There's no way you want me to do that. I mean, that's just crazy.
What point do you think that having that kindness and having that understanding with the drivers can get harmed in a way when drivers try to basically overtake your kindness in a way?
I mean, it can and can't, but I mean, if the top of your rules say this is what you get and what's listed below is what's there, I mean, it's the head inspector's choice to tell you that. I don't care if you misinterpreted, you can have a 2x2 cross member with 6 inches of angle iron. You can't take the cross member and weld it between the transmission and the engine cradle. That's made to go where your cross member goes. There's 80 other people here that put that there where the cross member and the training mount goes. You, for whatever reason, decided to cut that up in 6-inch pieces and wedge it between the engine cradle and your lower training protector. Cut it out or you're not running. We would rather piss off one person than the next year you're going to have all these people with all these radical ideas of what they want to do to their cross member. It's just not necessary. And I know people are going to be like, well, it doesn't say how it needs to be mounted in the car. Well, that is correct, but Josh would literally have to write a whole page of how to mount your crossmember in there, or we would have to send you a coloring book of how to build your car, and there would be a picture of where your crossmember goes, and what is colored red is what you can weld, and what is blue is metal. I mean, Josh has got some crazy stories when he calls me every other day. Like, you would not believe what this guy interpreted with this bumper bracket when it literally says flat on the frame, outside only, period. Well, it doesn't say that I can't cut the frame open and then wedge it in there sideways. No, it doesn't say that. But it also says one side of the frame flat on the outside, period. You know, like it's crazy.
So, do you think drivers do interpreting like that and drivers' viewpoint like that? Do you think that hurts the inspections in the long run, or do you think you just have to shoot the villager before it starts?
You have to shoot the villager before it starts. You have to nip it in the butt. Now, if it's not something crazy and it ain't going to win the Derby, and that driver thinks he got one over because he did this or did that, or he had his, inside fender seam welded to the firewall, like that's not going to make or break the Derby. If you got that by us, great. If we seen it and we thought, we don't care about that, that's not going to make or break the Derby. Who cares about the little stuff that isn't going to make you win? Now, when you do something to your frame that's a dead giveaway that's going to make the car not bend, yeah, we're nipping that in the butt. That's not allowed. No ifs, ands, or buts, period. I mean, there's just a time for the nitty-gritty stuff, and there's time for you bluntly have done something that is just not going to work.
So, do you think having Josh as an inspector, which he actually obviously has the background within the sport, do you think that helps compel your inspection in a positive way, that it helps limit the drivers like trying to do the stupid things with their cross member, trying to open up their frame and put their bumper plate on and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. If I didn't have Josh, I wouldn't be able to do this at all. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts, period. I mean, I'm not going to say he's the best inspector ever, but he's a fabricator, builder, and an inspector, and he's going to treat you fair as if he was building the car. I can see why you did that, but we're going to work with you, and you need to fix it this way. That's how I would fix that. If I built your car and ran it through the tech line, and he gives the inspection of, I used to build cars, and if I wanted you to fix it, I, as a fabricator and builder, would fix it this way so it doesn't ruin your car and you can still run. I don't think you get that when you go to some derbies because maybe they're not a fabricator, they're not a builder. I mean, this Josh, he will take a cage apart 7 times because it's crooked off an inch. He would cut the back dash bar out because it's not level, and I ran out of welding wire and the weld looks like shit. I'm cutting it out and I'm re-putting a new piece in there tomorrow. Like, he's just that thorough when he does that. If you looked up some of the stuff he builds daily online, you could tell he would build a 110% demo car. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's just the type of mentality that he has. And that's just a given. You see some people that roll through the inspection line, it's like, who welded this cage in? Like, it's crooked, upside down, the halo doesn't match. Like, that's just not Josh. Josh is a fabricator, builder, and as that, he's going to tell you that if I did this to a car, I would fix it this way as a fabricator. It's not going to tear your car up. Go cut that, show some respect, bring it back up here. Now, when you rub Josh the wrong way, yeah, you've been an asshole. Cut all of it off, or you don't run. See ya. Bye.
So how did you end up meeting Josh and getting him a part of Derby Icons?
I've known Josh for probably years. Never really talked to him, but waved, said hi, so on and so forth. And then he used to work with Adam and Craig Lemonadger. I don't know if you know them or not. And we kind of just got on the phone, and I asked if he wanted to help out and be a part of it. And that's pretty much where we're at now.
Awesome. So, we've already been on this for about 2 hours. So, looking forward to next year, what is like to hold for the future of Derby Icons and Spring Explosion and Metal Mayhem and Fall Brawl?
I mean, all I can say is I hope to be better. I don't know. I kind of base each show off each time you do one. We don't try to get out. Some people are a pre-planner a year out, but doing business, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. You don't know what next week's going to bring. It's hard for me to say, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to have this set of rules when, we're a year out. You need to be in that 5 or 6 month range and then figure out what your battles were and what your goodness was with the show that you just had.
Completely agree. Awesome. Do you got it? So we're about to get off here. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to everybody?
If you haven't been to Spring Explosion or Metal Mayhem, go to Derby Icons, reach out to us. Spring Explosion is beyond full with a waiting list, about 400 cars. We have full size limited weld, compacts, vans, youth, and we have two versus two heat races, about 35, 40 cars of each. And if you've never heard of us, come out and contact us. And Metal Mayhem information will be out mid-January.
Awesome. Well, I forgot to mention this. So in the description of this live, it's on Facebook. I don't believe it's on TikTok. There is the link to the Crashing for Kids Cancer PayPal. So Benson, he recently passed away not too long ago. The funeral was, I believe it was yesterday, and the wake was on Monday. The family's going through a hard time. Please go help those guys out, support them in a way. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us. We shall see tomorrow with Sam Williams and then Tim Clark on Friday. Should be great. Thank you for coming on. We'll see you guys later.
Yep, see you guys.